It happened before you started recording, so it's okay.
Okay, it's recording. Alright, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I guess we should introduce ourselves. I'm Becca. I'm in the class, the Asian American middle class, and I'm a sophomore studying psych.
I'm Amy. I'm in the same class, and I'm studying computer science. I'm a sophomore.
Are you making everyone introduce themselves or just like us?
Yeah, we'll just go around really quick.
Sure. I'm Joanna. I'm a senior human biology, health, and society major, and I'm also in the class, but not presenting.
I'm Iris. I'm in the class. I'm a sophomore mechanical engineering major.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm a junior communication major, but I like to proudly say that I'm an Asian American Studies minor.
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm a freshman in ILR. I'm also in the class.
I'm Robert. I am a sophomore physics major. I'm not in the class.
I'm Erica. I am a sophomore environmental science and sustainability major, and I'm here to support friends.
I'm Dana. I'm an HVHS major, and I'm not in the class either.
I'm Irene. I'm a junior. I'm a psych major, education minor.
Hi, I'm Renu. I'm a junior econ and Asian studies major.
Hi, I'm Fei Ning. I'm a junior human development major.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about, or our talk is titled Breaking the Silence, the Absent Asian American Voice. And pretty much what we'll be addressing is this complex or perception of Asian American in activism, in political life, in civic life, be it like actual political movements or like in law, whatever that looks like. We're going to be addressing how people seem to shy out of it. Nice one. And then we'll talk about that in light of the history of Asian Americans in political and activism. We'll give you a little background from what we've learned in class, and then we'll tie it into current events and what it means for us moving forward.
So just to put our discussion into context for today, I don't want to take up too much of your time talking because this is a discussion, but we wanted to give you kind of like a historical / scholarly thing to refer to when we think about our Asian American place, like Caucasian place, and etc. So I'll just go up to the board. So there's a scholar named Claire Jean Kim who came up with this model called racial triangulation. And typically a lot of theories that look at racism towards minorities is through a vacuum, so it's a binary model. So it's through, so for example, people talk about white on black racism or white on Asian racism, but we don't, until this model came about, we didn't really have a theory or model that looked at the three, the two minorities and how it's perceived by the dominant white. So basically, Claire Jean Kim, she posed this model, and these are the two fields of racial triangulation, where the y-axis is a scale of superiority to inferiority, and then the x-axis is whether you're a foreigner or insider, or how much of a foreigner are you, how much of an American are you. So you can see that this kind of resembles a triangle, and so if you look at where the whites are placed, they're superior and insider, which means that they're inherently American. Asian Americans are kind of wedged between the whites and the blacks, and so this is an interesting position to be in because, as we'll get into it, it's where Asian Americans are kind of perceived to be the model minority citizens because on one hand you're relatively superior in comparison to the blacks, but then you're perpetually a foreigner. Because, as you guys may or may not know, Asian American immigration has been in progress since like the mid 1800s, but we're forever dealing with the question of where are you really from? Like no, you're not from New Jersey, like where are you actually from? So that's kind of like the foreigner aspect. And then blacks are Americans because they were forcefully brought into the US. But in terms of class mobility, they're deemed as like having zero to like basically nothing. So I guess what you need to take away from that model is that it views races in a more multi-dimensional way. And so how we're going to relate that to apathy and kind of like how Asian Americans are seen as passive is that because Asian Americans hold this kind of like relatively superior class status. You'll see often in media issues, like for example, racially charged incidents such as like African American deaths, where you don't really see Asian American voices speak out, and that could kind of relate to people not wanting to lose their status, because that's a status that was given to Asian Americans by whites essentially. And then in terms of what's the other scale? Foreigner insider scale. Because we're also foreigners, a lot of Asian Americans may feel that they don't have the right to speak out. So it's that like we don't belong in the political sphere. So yeah, so in regards to that model, does anyone have questions? Okay.
Alright, so we'll move straight into the icebreaker question. If you guys could split up into groups of 3, that would be great. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how vocal are you about political and social issues? Let's discuss among yourselves and then we'll reconvene later.
GW Democrats.
Yeah, I feel like it's not
to
like
work in DC.
as informed as maybe like people who actually study
I'm definitely
policy
interested, but then the thing is
sorry, go on. I definitely among my family members, but it's a lot harder to speak up in public because you don't know how relevant your ideas are.
I think like now that it's what you identify or like what you're passionate about, so like I identify as Asian American female, who's like really passionate about that topic. So like in all 3 of those, I'll like I have no like hesitation talking about it, but then like maybe with other social issues, I would be less inclined.
On a daily basis, in terms of the scale, like their ratio so I
But like then you're basing how active you are on like there's so many. Do you have to post on Facebook in order to be like I think it's like so many things. Like I think just personal from my experience, like not standing up for myself has to do with like when I was socialized as a female, when I was socialized as an Asian American. I don't know.
I feel like for like people listen like how long they've been also Asian
We all like I think there's definitely a fear of it's a lot about
it's still
I think
Did you want to contribute?
This topic?
like I'm very
I think that's what the question mark continues.
Really conversations. I think I'm more vocal in a more public setting than family. Still haven't come to like trying to be able to speak to my parents about it that much. They haven't shown much like wanting it to say that's like something, but I don't know, it's just like different, it's like feels like super personal. It's like an incident that happened and like I feel like something needs to be done like like I think just like normally like things you can be political statements as well. Just like I mean I've heard of like black women, like the idea of like even in like a world with like a lot of shit, to like take to and we're constantly fighting like that constantly like presenting that person being happy or joyful.
Alright guys, we're slowly gonna start reconvening and to share what we discussed. So, would you like to share first?
Okay. I guess I'll start with like what I said. If you want me to give like a number, I'd probably say like 8 probably. I'd like to think I am like vocal and like supportive in political and social movements, but there's always like something more you can do basically. And like personally I feel like in like voicing my opinion, it could happen more.
Guess it's me. I guess I was feeling rather similar about that. I'd say I'm probably an 8. You know, a lot of times we're all constrained by how much we can do, and you know, you have to pick and choose what things you can really devote like a lot of your time into. But at the same time, being vocal isn't just like dedicating all your time to a cause. It's understanding that when something happens or you see something wrong, it's not being afraid to stand out and say, hey, you know, you're doing the wrong thing. This is where you need to change because that's hurtful or the wrong idea to have. And I think that's a pretty important part about it, and it's certainly something I've tried to do, especially in college.
I'd say I'm a 5 because I'm really interested in these issues, but a lot of the time I don't really know where I stand necessarily. I don't feel comfortable like vocalizing it.
Why do you feel like you don't feel comfortable vocalizing?